Well, welcome everyone. Boy, that was a difficult task getting on today. I don't know what was going on. It just wouldn't let me stream in there. Let me just check what's going on. I don't know. I've got no ideas. People are saying it's the virus. I love it. Too many coronas. It wasn't working. Cheers, everyone. I've got. You can even see that I've half finished my corona. Love it. So welcome everyone. Sorry about the delay this morning. I don't know what was going on with YouTube. It just wouldn't accept the codes to get in. So I've got no idea what was going on. But let me just quickly come over. We're going to check and see who's here this morning. Casper being sarcastic as usual. Evans is here, or Evans. Gerald's also here. Altric. Steve is saying greetings all. Henry is saying hello, good people. Photomiac, thumbs up 5, because that's my lucky number. I've already got 2 thumbs down. I love it. Aaron said yoo-hoo. So he's back. His electricity's back on. That's good to see you here, Aaron. Fitz is also saying hello. Carl saying wow. I don't have that problem. My problem is no electricity most of the time. Yeah, Aaron's having issues with all the earthquakes that he's been having. Steve is saying he's from Adelaide. David's also saying hello. Michael is saying just want the RF lens drop prices. I don't think they're going to drop for a while. Carl said David is having technical difficulties. Please stand by. Yeah, it wasn't good at all this morning. It took me 20 minutes. I was trying for 20 minutes to get on. And all of a sudden it worked. Colin's also saying hello as well. Michael is saying house too hot today. Yeah, I've got all my air conditioners on today, guys. It's around about, it's going to be 42 degrees or 43 degrees Celsius today, which is probably, I don't know, about 105 or something. I don't know what it is in the in Fahrenheit, but it's pretty hot now. It's just gone over 40 here. No pressure, David. You just have a huge audience waiting. I love it. Jason said present. Peter said 2 minutes, 2 thumbs down. I know, I love it. I got 2 thumbs down straight away. I love it. If you can, guys, please give me a thumbs up. It does help the channel. Photomix says EOS-R5 is a scam. Don't believe any of it. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. I'm a bit skeptical about a lot of those things, but let's see. Let's have a discussion about it anyway. Canon needs to fix the battery problem. What's going on with the battery, Michael? Aaron said fake news. Carl said the specifications of the rumoured EOS-R5 are BS, but it's good to see that they are getting serious about mirrorless, and that's going to be our first story tonight, actually. New battery didn't last long. Oh, don't last long. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Photomix says, I couldn't afford the RF glass if I tried. They are expensive, but they're great lenses. They are really good lenses. Rob said, great to catch you live. G'day, Rob. How are you? Langston's also here. Zoet has said, the new Canon camera rumour is total crap. Don't muck around, Zoet. Just say what you really feel. I love it. It's totally crap. Why would Canon want to come out and cripple the newly released 1DX3? That's funny. Gerald says, Photomiac, I agree. If it was true, that would mean Canon must have leapfrogged everyone beyond technology. To all the people that, who sub to my YouTube channel currently, you are the real most valuable persons. Photomiac says, exactly, Gerald. I can see possibly a 1DX Mark III specs in an EOS-R body, but not what they are reporting. Blue Media says more to Barbados. It's 29 degrees at night. Yeah, we were like that last night. I think I went to bed at 10:30 last night, and it was still about 32 or 33 degrees last night. There will be no R5 that will shoot 8K. I love it. It's cracking me up what you guys are saying. If those specs are real, then there would be a bunch of hidden downsides like no AF over 4K 30 or a 5-minute time recording limit. Go with the camera, 8K video time-lapse. Mark said, how do you think these Canon specs will affect the A7S III plans? I'm going to talk about that in the first story anyway, Mark. Raymond said, here, Cameron is good for Sony 2020. I'm not sure what that means. David, well, kind sir. Rob said, hi all. David, I don't think Canon would never come close? Not yet, I think. John said, obviously, we'll need a cheap 8K monitor in 2020. My 2K monitor is just not enough. I hope I can find one for under 20 grand. I'm starting to think that you guys don't believe the Canon rumors are true. What's wrong with you guys? Come on. I mean, seriously. Now, we've only got... I can't believe this. I've only got another week until I'm in America. So it's only another week now, guys. I'm getting so excited. I can't wait, actually. I've just had a few more things burned off my head this morning. I thought I better get prepared. So I went and the doctor used dry ice to burn a couple of sunspots. So if anyone's wondering what these are, I've had that done. But yeah, we've only got a week to go. Really looking forward to popping over. So we fly out on the 10th, just in time. I've got my mask for the virus in case if I cop something on the way over. I said to Kerry, if anyone's next to me looking like they're sneezing or whatever, I'm just going to put a mask on. Yeah, hopefully there'll be nothing like that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys. So that'll be in another week or so. So excited. Can't wait, guys. So let's get started because today we've got some interesting to discuss. So let me just put down here the show's starting at 6:33. I will come back to all of the questions, obviously, as we're going on. But let me just start this and we'll start the show.
If you're looking for some crazy, I'll tell you everybody's standing in a line for the water slide. You can come on over, we can take the roller coaster. And you know everybody's looking for a ride in the water slide. Water slide.
Well, welcome everyone. We were a little bit late. I had YouTube technicalities trying to get on this morning, but we're finally here. Thank you to everyone that tried or booked into my workshop that's going to happen at the end of March. The pin-up workshoot that we're doing, it has now sold out. So we did sell out 8 places and that's gone. We may even take it to some other places depending on how we go, but I wouldn't mind to say do one in Sydney as well, but we just have to find a decent location that looks similar to what we'll be shooting here. So anyway, thank you so much for the people that did join and have already paid. I didn't even have to advertise it, which was fantastic. I thought I was going to have to advertise to fill it, but it just sold very, very quickly in 2 days. So that's really exciting. So, and like I just said before that came up, if you don't want to watch the whole show, I will put a timeline down below so you can check and skip to whatever interests you. So, you know, if you find the show's too long, you can just skip to the stories that you find really interesting. We've got some great stories today. There is some Canon stuff because it's sort of relevant to what Sony is going to hopefully release soon. So I will be going through some Canon stuff as well today and having some big discussions. Some of the discussions are probably going to create real talking points because I've noticed online they've been causing some real heated discussions, so it's quite interesting. So we should have some really good things to talk about today. And obviously, if you miss the show live, please leave some questions down below so that you can get into the discussion as well. And I do always read every question that goes up, and I will always at least put a love heart or even answer most of them. So please do that. For anyone just coming in, I am going to be in the US with Kerry in another week. So looking forward to seeing you all over there. We should have a nice meetup organised, hopefully at Michael's hamburger restaurant, which is meant to be a really cool location. I think we're going to do the first meetup there, and then we can sort of take things from there. So stay tuned if you want some information about that. It'll be in LA. And then stay tuned on the photography videography school because that might also be a place where we're posting things that are coming up. I have finished half of my Corona already because I was having trouble getting on. So cheers everyone. So let's go. First story. This is going to be interesting, especially after what you guys have all been slamming these rumors straight away. So let's go. Stuck in. I've just got to put the time. What are we on? 10:06. All right, so it's interesting. Now, Sony Alpha rumors shared this morning, and I've noticed it's also, I think, been on Petapixel. It's been on a number of places this morning, talking about how Canon are going to attack Sony. And basically what they're saying is that they want to become number one in the mirrorless market. If you look at overall sales, Canon are still way ahead if you're looking at sales of all cameras. That's talking about digital SLR, mirrorless, the smaller cameras, all these sort of things. Canon is way ahead if you're talking about overall sales, but Sony has beaten them in full-frame mirrorless sales, and it looks like that's where Canon want to try and attack. And so it's an interesting story, and they have been mentioning this in their articles. I'm not going to read the whole thing because I'll put the links down below and you can read some of this yourselves. But the interesting thing is that they are saying things, I'll just go through this quickly, that although we have launched 2 full-frame mirrorless cameras as well as 10 dedicated lenses, our lineup is still insufficient. In order to recover from our late entry into the mirrorless camera market, we have plans to launch a model that incorporates a newly developed image sensor and image processing engine that offers even more advanced features. We will work to raise our presence in the mirrorless camera category, leveraging trade exhibitions around the world, even amid increasing competition. And they're saying here that we will expand sales of higher-end models driven by new products and aim for top market share even in the mirrorless camera market. So like Sony Alpha rumors are saying here, they're saying that they clearly want to claim the number one spot back. That's what they're after for Sony mirrorless, from Sony mirrorless cameras. But they're saying so far Canon sensor tech lags behind Sony, and their 4K capability is crippled in many ways. No dual AF, crop mode, and so forth. I find it hard to believe Canon can suddenly surpass or even match Sony sensor performance. So, and then they just put down here, still, if the new EOS-R5 delivers what is promised, Sony has to step up their game considerably, and that's good news for us too. So the interesting, before I sort of go and look at the EOS-R, the new one that they're sort of putting out the specs to the interesting thing here is that they've said they do want to take away that mantle of being number one in the mirrorless market. And that was an interesting statement to actually say that. Now, it may all just be marketing-driven things. I mean, we know how it works. Sony do the same thing as well. All manufacturers do. But they clearly are starting to think that they're moving more and more into mirrorless. Now, remember, over the last couple of weeks, Canon announced that they wouldn't be developing much of their EF lenses anymore, that they'd be concentrating now on mirrorless. So I think all of a sudden, Canon have realized that the time for the switch has to be done. Now, the interesting thing is that people are saying there that the 4K and stuff like that will be have bad crops and things like that. Well, looking at what the EOS-R, the new version that's coming out, the 5D Mark III, I always forget the name of the Canon. Anyway, the new high-end Canon camera. Basically, it's the 1DX Mark III, I think. Basically, the video specs on that camera are really, really good. Really good. And it will hold focus as 4K 60. It actually has focus at 4K 60. So when people are saying they don't have the capability of doing that anymore, it's not true. They've proven that, or they're going to prove that when the 1DX Mark III comes out, that they can do it. I believe if you go up to the higher megapixels, then the autofocus, or the higher frame rates, the autofocus then stops. But if you were doing 4K 60, it will have AF. Now, they're not saying what sort of crop is going to be involved yet at this stage, but it's interesting now that they have enabled for the first time you'd have autofocus in 4K 60. So they've proven that they can do it. Now, whether they're going to take those technologies and put that down into the EOS-R line is another thing that we have to wait for, but I would think they probably will. I think the 1DX is probably going to be their last high-end digital SLR that they will release. The next one is going to be something along the EOS-R line that's a high-end EOS-R, and that's sort of proven by the fact that they're now saying that they're no longer going to be releasing EF lenses in the future. They're going to concentrate more on the RF lenses. So it makes sense to me. I mean, remember, if you look at it, Canon have really had incredible lenses, probably the best lenses that are out there in the whole, out of the whole system, but they haven't had a camera body to sort of match that, which, you know, the two EOS-Rs that they've released they're okay. I mean, they're quite good, but they're not high-ended enough that you'd be paying all that money for that glass and then sticking it on a camera that, you know, doesn't have autofocus when you're dealing with the high frame rates in video. It's got massive crops on it. They've only got the one card slot and things like that. So it is about time that Canon release something high-ended to match what they're offering in their lens department. So I think it is going to come. But is it going to be like the specs that they're saying for the new EOS-R that I'm going to talk about in the next story? But I think that before we go to that, I'm just trying to summarize what I think is probably going to happen. I think this is going to be a really big year, and I think it's going to be a really big year for Canon. I'm not sure about Nikon at this stage, but I thank you so much, Rob. He said, have a safe and rewarding trip to the US. Just gave me $10 there. Thank you so much, Rob. Really appreciate that, mate. So I think it's going to be a really big year this year, and I think there's going to be a real fight between Canon and Sony this year coming up. And I think Canon has finally woken up, and this is the thing that I think is going to actually happen this year. I think Canon is finally going to release a camera that is a worthy competitor. I know the EOS-R already is a good camera, but I'm talking about a worthy competitor for professionals. Like I'm saying, that without crops and without dual card slots and things like that, I think they're finally starting to wake up that the money is in mirrorless, and they have to make the move. And I think it's the penny has finally dropped with Canon. Now it's going to be interesting to see how Sony reacts to this, because if Canon do release something that is amazing, it is going to shake up the industry a little bit, and then Sony is going to have to show their hand, and which I mean is a great thing for us Sony users, because if Canon do an amazing release, well then Sony have to answer it. And then we're all winning from that. So I think it's great. And I hope Canon does it. I really hope Canon does push out something really good that forces Sony to play their hand. Because at this stage, like I said, we're still waiting on an A7 IV. We're still waiting on the A7S III. Cameras like that we're not sure whether it's technical that they're not releasing an A7S III or what's going on in that regard. But you know, the longer that Sony wait, the harder it's going to be for them. So if Canon do release something that's amazing, Sony could be in trouble if they don't answer it quickly enough. But that's that story. So let's open up and have a look at what Canon have said for this EOS-R. So let me go to here. And then I'll talk about the specs on this camera. So most of the specs on this camera, or some of the specs on this camera, are ridiculous. I can't see this happening at this stage. But let's look at what they're saying that the specs are. That Canon is rumoured to launch the first full-frame 8K camera on February the 13th. And now Sony, where is the A7S IV? So I'm not sure about these specs. And I'll talk about the ones that I think are just not going to happen at this stage. They're saying that this camera is going to be called the Canon EOS-R5. So that's the name that they're saying that this will be. They're saying it's a 45 megapixel full frame CMOS sensor, 5 stops with IBIS alone, 7 to 8 stops of correction when used with in-lens stabilization. Now, if that's the case, that is a massive step up to what any other camera manufacturer is offering. If they can get up to 7 to 8 stops, that is leagues better than anything that's available at the moment. Now, whether they're talking about incorporating that with digital stabilization, it's possible that they may be thinking about, say, adding digital stabilization in, as well as having the IBIS, as well as having the lens stabilization, and incorporating digital stabilization as well. It is possible, but that is a massive step up from what we're talking about now, that the best Sony cameras are around about 5.5 stops. So you're talking about 7 to 8 stops is nuts. So I'm very skeptical about they could do that unless they're using something like digital stabilization as well as the IBIS and the in-lens stabilization. 8K, I'll just read these first. 12 frames per second mechanical, 20 frames per second electronic. Well, that doesn't surprise me because Canon have already proven that they can done it. They're doing 20 frames per second mechanical on the 1DX Mark III. So they've now proven that they can do that. So I don't think that's too out of the realm of, that is possible. Scroll wheel added to the back. I think that's probably a definite. They're going to get rid of that silly little wheel that they've got on the EOS-Rs at the moment. No touch bar, which is why I'm saying they need to get rid of that. Live view movie toggle like the EOS-R digital SLRs. Larger capacity battery, but looks like the LPE6. Now this is where I'm starting to get a bit. This I don't believe at this stage. They are saying 8K 30 frames per second. Now there's a couple of ways of looking about this too. If they were able to pull 8K off, there would not be much of a crop in this camera, because if they're dealing with a 45 megapixel sensor, I think you need a 36 megapixel sensor to do 8K. So there can't be much of a crop involved in this camera. So this is why I don't believe that this really is possible at this stage. Look, it's definitely going to happen in the future, but I just don't think we're there yet. I think we're probably another year or so away from being able to offer 8K like this, at this level anyway. I think, what is it, Sharp did one or Panasonic did one, I can't remember. There was a manufacturer out there that has got an 8K camera, but I think that was manual focus. There was no autofocus involved and things like that. But so I don't believe that you're going to get 8K 30 frames per second at this stage. I think it's possible that you could get 4K 120. I wouldn't be surprised if Sony does 4K 120 as well with their A7S line, the new A7S line, because I think, remember, when Sony is saying they're going to bring out something that is going to blow us all away or exceed expectations, they can't really bring out just a 4K 60 camera anymore. So it has to be something higher than that. So I think 4K 120 frames per second is a possibility, and I think 4K 60 frames per second is probably accurate, because I think that if they're going to aim for a high-end market with these cameras to come in with a high-end model, I think that's also possible. I don't believe 8K is true. I don't believe the 7 to 8 stops of correction within lens stabilization is true. I think you're probably going to be just that 5 stops with IBIS. So that's looking at that side of it. Built-in 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, new battery, announcement ahead of CP next month, launching in July. I'm assuming that's the date. They're saying now it's unclear if that 8K feature works in full frame mode, or if it works in crop mode, or if it's more of a Usenerous burst feature like something like the Panasonic cameras have. If it's indeed that burst mode, then you cannot really say it's 8K video. Yeah, it's 8K still, so it's not. That's sort of cheating when they say that. That said, if on February the 13th the EOS-R5 will have 8K recording, then Sony will have some trouble. They may have to announce the A7S4 or the A7S3 at CP Plus and not at the NAB show to steal the show from Canon. But lately Sony has been a bit lazy with their releases. Also, the Fuji X-T3 reigns unchallenged in the APS-C world. So it's interesting, and it says, I remind you that Sony said the A7S2 successor will do at least 4K 60, 10-bit 422, and it's rumoured it can actually record 4K 120p. So I think this is just a media beat-up. I mean, I do think, looking at these specs, there's no way on earth that they're going to come out with an 8K camera. I'll be so surprised if they do that, and I'll also be so surprised if it's 7 to 8 stops in the camera. I would not be surprised if it's 4K 120 though, as a high-end model, and 4K 60 without much of a crop at all. I think Canon are finally starting to learn, after being slammed for cameras they've brought out that have been crippled. I think they finally are waking up to the fact that they've been slammed before. In fact, if you look at the 1DX Mark III, that camera is amazing, and for what they've done there, if they transfer that down into a mirrorless market, it's going to be incredible cameras. So let's open it up to the chat, because I'm just curious to see what you guys have to say all about this. But, you know, I mean, we're in interesting times. You never know. They may pull a rabbit out of the hat and do what Sony did with the A7 III. and bring out something incredible, and we're all going to say, wow, I just didn't believe that was possible. But anyway, so let's open this up. Thank you so much for that donation too, Rob. All right, so let's see. What A7S3 plans laugh out loud? Sony still silent. Yeah, we're not getting much on it at all. And they're saying it is, and that's the interesting thing, that what Hero said here is true, that this is a CR3. And on Canon rumours, that's like a CR5. A CR3 is usually fact. And that's the interesting thing about this. So Canon rumours are going to look pretty silly if this is nothing like this. And that's one interesting point about that, because it is a CR3 rumour. Michael says, you do need extra mask. They all sold out soon. Yeah, I've got enough to travel with, Michael. Has anyone actually plotted their accuracy of these rumours? Well, it is a CR3, so that's the interesting thing. John said the R5 sounds more like an A7R V's daddy. The only accurate rumour site is Nikon Rumours. They usually get it right every time. They don't post wild reports just for clicks. Colin said, good night, David. Have a safe and enjoyable trip and bring back a souvenir. I will be live next week, guys. That's I don't leave until the Monday after that, so I will have the last show live next week. We might be able to do some while I'm in the US though, so if we have decent Wi-Fi, I'll still do them while we're in the US. What else have we got? Jason said, I frequent all of the sites. Nikon Rumours is definitely cult level. NR, I'm not sure what that means. Is definitely cult level toxic. Sony is mostly defending against trolls, and Fuji has a handful of toxic fanboys. Super Duper being one of the worst. Jason said Sony definitely has its fanboys as well, but I haven't seen a ton of aggression from them, just denial. Chris said Canon keeps the sale numbers up with their Costco kit cameras and lower end cameras. Photomix said Sony being number one in mirrorless camera sales is a no-brainer. Not hard to sell 5 to 6 models over just 2. When Canon comes out with more mirrorless cameras to choose from, they will be number one. Jason also said those Canon R5 rumours are juicy as hell. If they were going for clickbait, they won hands down. Well, they certainly have. It's certainly got people talking. But like the interesting thing is, like I said, it is an R3 rumour, which is usually based on almost facts. So it's really interesting. John said, I think Sony sales dropping to third in November, December is mostly due to the cheaper models being released by Nikon at Christmas and the holidays. I expect to see Sony jump again as the new year progresses. The other thing too, they had lots of sales on the EOS-Rs as well. Heaps of sales just before Christmas too. John says, got to remember, pros and YouTubers are a yummy minority of the total camera buyer market. Canon makes a lot of good, easy-to-use cameras that are perfect for most buyers. And Canon still has the biggest name that's out there, that's for sure. Thanks so much for the donation, Rob. Langston said Sony needs to wake up. Well, they certainly need to release something soon, that's for sure. I remember 3 years ago when Sony had this kind of hype train. MJ says, I'm not ruling out that I'll be a Canon shooter someday. I love it. John said, Sony will be here to Canon's Sony will be the heir to a Canon's tortoise if they don't watch out. Jason said, I wonder if Canon will deliver on those rumours. It makes sense for super high-end bodies with amazing specs to match those RF lenses. And it does. I mean, it certainly does. The minute that Canon brings out a really good high-end EOS-R body, I think they will sell really well. Even if they're expensive, they will sell really well because due to the fact that people are paying for those expensive lenses. So I think overall, it's probably going to be a great camera. And like I said, I love competition and like anything that will make Sony work harder for me is an advantage. So I really hope Canon brings out something incredible. And I'd be really excited about it if they did that. George said, go back a couple of years. Would you have believed me if I told you Canon would be chasing after Sony? Yeah, interesting. John said, it's funny, everyone says Canon needs a body worthy of its lenses. Then when it looks like they're going to do it, no one wants to believe it. I believe it, John. I think they are going to bring out something this year, definitely. I'm just not sure about the specs of this, though, but I do believe they'll bring out something amazing this year with something like a CF Express card as well as your normal SD cards. I think they're going to really bring out a big improvement this year. Guy with the camera said, John, the specs are far-fetched, surpassing their own 16K cinema camera. Sony is holding out to see what Canon does. My theory, then they will adjust accordingly. Photomaniac says, I will say this. After testing the TechArt EFZ adapter, those Canon 1.2 lenses are something special. I agree. I understand why Canon fanboys love Canon now. The colours in those lenses are hard to beat. They are amazing. The RF lenses are unbelievable. The ones that I've tested in the camera stores are beautiful. 42 Pro says, I have secretly been looking at the Canon glass with the MC11 combo because of the lag in Sony's innovation of late. I hope Canon does produce an affordable 4K 60 PDAF, no crop camera. Competition is great for us. And that's it is. The people that bag competition are really being a bit silly, in fact, because like I said, I've heard people say that they hope camera companies fail and all this sort of stuff. I hope Nikon survives. I hope Pentax survive. I hope Fuji survive, Canon survive. In fact, I hope they bring out amazing cameras. And the more that they bring out that pushes my camera company, which is Sony, the camera company that I use, the more happy I'll be because it'll force them to innovate. These Creative Film said, sup everyone, these specs are suspect. Yeah, I'm not sure either. David said 1DX 20 frames per second is only at 20 megabytes. Yes, it is. But still, it's an amazing feat to do it at mechanical though, David. The A9 can't even do that. So that is an amazing feat. 8K with a 5 times crop. I don't think that's the case though. See, this is the interesting thing because like I said to you, that you need if you're doing 8K, I believe you need a 36 megapixel sensor. Now, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the case. So if you need a 36 megapixel sensor, there can't be much of a crop involved if you're starting out from a 45 megapixel sensor. I believe that's the case. So if that is true, 4K and the 8K may not have much of a crop. They don't even make memory cards big enough to do 8K video. Oops. I hate it when it jumps like that. What the hell is a scroll wheel? Nothing with that name. I think they're just talking about your normal wheel like they have at the back. By the way, what is happening with Sharp's 8K camera? That's it. It was Sharp, wasn't it? From NAB last year with the tone curve. I'm not sure. I did see that it was shown at the last big camera thing in New York that they had a few weeks ago. I did see it was shown there, I believe. Sony said 4K 60 was easy last year, so expect 4K 240 this year, Hero. Whew. I hope every bit of it is true, so Sony will be forced to respond. Love my Sony and Tamron and Sony glass. I'm just trying to see. John said the 7 to 8 stops of ISIS is with the IBIS and lens combined. 5-point stops body alone. Yeah, but John, the Sony cameras, even with IBIS and the lens stabilization, we're only getting 5.5 stops. So, yeah, it's still incredible that they've jumped that up to 7.8 stops there that they're saying. I used the 1DX3 at the Australian Open, and word in the media room is with an Australian retail price of 12K, Canon folks are switching to Sony or waiting for a Sony Pro mirrorless camera. Yeah, it's very, very expensive, I agree. I mean, price-wise, if you're just doing sports, you know, you can't go past the A9, the amount of money you're saving compared to the 1DX. David, so glad to hear you say you hope Canon delivers on this, because this will help us all. Can't understand fanboys hoping they can't deliver just so Sony will stay on top. Exactly, Mark. I agree completely with you. I hope Canon can deliver this. And like, I don't think they will. I think it's a bit rumour mongering going on here. But I do believe they will release something amazing sometime this year. But I would be absolutely enthralled or rapt if they brought out this camera with those specs that they had it. Apparently the 8K HDR TVs are coming out sometime this year, so it wouldn't surprise me if 8K cameras get released with these specs. Anyone in the market for a Zeiss 51.4 Sony? The Sony A7 IV is on its way because the A7 III is discounted. Yeah, I've noticed the A7 III is being discounted a lot of places now, so I do think the A7 IV is going to be announced very, very soon. So stay tuned for that. Where is Maestro? Don't know where Michael is. And that's it. Let's keep going. All right, so let's look at the next story, which is these new Sigma lenses. What are we on? 36, 31. I'll put 40. So the next story is this one, and this was an interesting one. Again, it's just showing how many Sony lenses now we're starting to get. This is a Sigma patent that's coming out. It's like I said before, I think we're just going to start to see more and more lenses now released, and we really are blessed now on the Sony platform. There's patents for these lenses coming up, which is the 16f2, the 18mm 1.8, the 18f 2.8, the 20 1.8, 24 1.8, the 28 1.8, and the 35 1.8. Now there is detailed specs. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'll leave it down below so you can have a look at it. But I did do the, I did vote, because I voted that I'd like the 16f2, but the number one lens that people are voting for is they'd like the 35 1.8. The 16f2 was the next in votes. The 24 1.8 was next. 18 1.8 was next. And the 20 1.8 was after that. The 28 f 1.8 was after that. And the 18 was last. The 18 f 2.8. But it's like I said now, if you look at the whole lens lineup that we've got, with Sigma releasing amazing lenses, Tamron, Samyang, obviously Sony, all these lenses that we've got now in this marketplace that we can put on our cameras is incredible. It really is. Like, we are so blessed now, and it's just going to keep getting more and more and more. I can't wait for some wide angle lenses to release that's fast. Like I said, there's rumours, and I'll talk about that near the end, but there's rumours about a Sony going to bring out a wide-angle lens. I'd love Tamron to bring out something that was really wide as well. But, you know, like I did review recently, if you haven't checked that out, I did review recently the 24 and the 35mm from Tamron, and they were amazing. I was really happy with those lenses. They were really good. It surprised me for the price that they were. How good they were. In fact, I think they were better. The 35 was definitely better than what I used to use with the Sony 35 f2.8. So it was really sharp, particularly in the center. They got a little bit softer on the edges, but in the center they were incredibly sharp. So I think now we really are blessed with these lenses that are out there. Tamron are producing amazing lenses, and Sigma are producing amazing lenses. I'm hoping to get the 20mm Tamron to take away to the US, but I'm still waiting to see if it comes into the country that I can get one. So stay tuned for that. But I just wanted to share that with you, what was there. So let me just go to this next story before we move on. 39, 25. The next story is this one, and I'm going to talk about this, but boy, has this caused some fiery comments online, and it's talking about the 95 lenses tested for the A7R Mark IV. It's interesting because even if you go into Sony Alpha Rumors and look at the comments, there's people going crazy in there about this, and it's really interesting how people get so upset by things that they read, and they start to say it's like sometimes it's like you have to justify your purchase. And my God, if someone has criticizes your choice about the lens that you've purchased, all hell is going to break out. I mean, the interesting thing is, I don't give a hoot what anyone says about the lenses that I've bought. I would not give two hoots. Like, for instance, down here, it has, in this section here, it's got the Sony 35 f1.4 as just being a good lens. And I used to use that lens all the time, and I adored that lens. Now remember, this is just talking about using these lenses to resolve for the A7R4, that it will resolve the 60 megapixel sensor and you'll get everything off that lens for that sensor. It's not saying these lenses are bad, it's just saying that, and remember this is one person's opinion, but he has tested them sort of extensively, but he's basically saying from the tests that he's done that he believes these are the best lenses and they go all the way down to the bad lenses. But again, it's his opinion. And like I said, my Sony 35 1.4 he's only got down as good. I adore that lens. And remember, for me, it's not really about how really true sharp the lens is. It's about and this is the other thing you've got to consider too, that it's also about the other features that that lens has as well, with things like how fast does that lens focus? What controls are in that lens? Like if you have the the G Master lenses that, you've got the aperture, declicked aperture ring there. You've got your buttons that you can program for autofocus. You've got your declickable switch that you can switch through here. So there's many things that go into your choice about why you love that lens. And not everyone is into really sharp lenses. And sometimes when I look at vintage lenses, I love that look, that they give. There's something mysterious about it. I've talked to you all along that I love the look of the Canon 85 1.2. And that lens is not a sharp lens, but there's just something about it. I mean, I remember Ike saying that he's used recently the 85 1.2. I'm not sure whether it was a Canon or whatever. Yeah, it was a Canon, I think. And he adored the look of it as well. There's just something about some lenses that are more than just absolute sharpness, or where you'd put them as being outstanding resolution. There's something about how that lens resolves. It's like the Batis lens that I have, the 85 Batis. There's a certain look, and I do see that. They call it that Zeiss pop, and often I'll take a shot with a Batis, and I can see that color pop that lens tends to have. It may not have that ultimate sharpness, but there's a lot of other things besides having the ability to resolve that sensor. And that's what they're talking about on this. So let's have a look at what they're saying here. And they're talking about the outstanding, and he said that many other criteria need to be taken into account for determination of what is a good lens. And he hasn't assessed this, which is bokeh, color rendition, AF, size, price, build quality, etc. And that's another thing that you've got to take into account when you're looking at these results. So according to his tests, he's got things like the outstanding lenses are the Sony 24GM, the Sony 50 1.4, the Sony 135 GM, the Sony 400GM. Oh, thank you so much, Dwayne. Dwayne just gave me another donation. Thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate that. Sony 400, Sony 600 f4GM, the Tamron 24, and the Tamron 35 2.8. And the interesting thing is I saw a lot of people slamming that. Well, I tested the Tamron, both of those Tamron lenses, and they were very, very good. And it appears that they're able to resolve the A7R4. I don't have the A7R4, so I couldn't do any testing like that. But center sharpness, and if you go back to what I was saying in the in that review that I did of those lenses, they were incredibly sharp in the center. And he's sort of saying that, if you're looking at this, that they suffered a little bit on the edges, but they were still beautiful lenses. And for the price, I think it's amazing. The other one's a Sigma 35 1.2, the Sigma 105. I've used the Sigma 105, and that was one of the most amazing lenses I've ever used. The Sigma 135 Art, I found the Sigma 135 Art and the Sigma 135 GM to be almost identical in their results. But the 135 Sony had the advantage of the better focus. It had the advantage of the extra dials, and it had the your declickable aperture. So I think the 135 Sony lens is a much better lens because of those extra features, and that's why I'm saying that it's subjective to what you want to do. I found the bokeh between the two of them was almost identical. Voigtlander 50, the Voigtlander 65, and the Voigtlander 10. Excellent is the Sony 12 to 24, Sony 16 to 35, etc. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these because you can have a look at it yourself, but very good. I'd just like to say in here, and this is where a lot of people got upset, and they said very good was the Sony 85 1.4 GM, the Sony 85 1.8, the Sony 50 2.8 macro, Sony 2470, and this is where I think a lot of people got really upset because the Sony 24 GM was only listed as very good. The Tamron 28 to 75 was also listed as very good, and the Tamron 17 to 28. Now, I love the Tamrons. I absolutely adore both of those Tamron lenses, and am I upset because they're only listed as very good? No, because I love them. It's not all about having that ability to resolve an A7R4. Even if you use these lenses on an A7R4, it doesn't mean that those lenses are going to be bad. It just means that they're not having ultimate resolution to resolve that lens or that sensor. So it's really, in the end of the day, unless you're a complete pixel peeper that loves to go in and blow the image up 1,000,000% to have a look at the resolution, you're never going to notice almost any of these, even down to probably where they get down to the good area. The average, I agree with. The Sony 28 to 70 kit lens, I had that and sold it. I hated it. I didn't like that lens really at all. The Sony 2470 f4, I used to have that. It was okay, but it doesn't match anywhere near the 2470 f2.8 or the Tamron lenses, that's for sure. Sony 28 f2, I've not really used that, so I can't comment on that one. Sony 50 1.8, yes, I agree, that's not a very good lens, and there's a couple of others down there as well. The bad was the Sony 24 to 240. Well, it's a kit lens, so you would expect that not to have very good rendering, and I'm not surprised that that was put down as very bad. Does it mean that it's going to give horrible images? No, it doesn't, but I think people take this sort of stuff way too personal, and, you know, I mean, look, I agree with what they're saying. My two favourite lenses are listed on here. The two favourite lenses I use are the Sony 24 GM and the 135 GM, which I both absolutely adore those lenses. I've done extensive reviews of the two Tamron lenses, and I can tell you those two lenses were incredibly good for the price. So, you know, I just wanted to talk to you about that. I'd love to know your opinion about that, particularly, I'm going to go to the live chat in a minute, but I'd love to know your opinion about that, because it's interesting that so many people got so upset about it. I don't think in any way he was saying those lenses were bad, and it may be that perhaps the naming of this could be improved or something, perhaps. But what you've got to remember here is that we were only talking about the ability to resolve the sensor. They're not talking about bokeh, color rendition, AF performance, size, price, and build quality. So you've got to understand that when you're looking at that. I think people missed that when they were basically bagging this whole article. And yeah, it's interesting. I just thought I'd bring that up and have a chat with you about it anyway. Next story before we open up to chat was this, because this is just more about the rumours that are going on, and they're talking about possible Sony Sigma Tamron product release schedules. They're talking about, and I'm not going to read the whole article, but they're talking about in the coming months, and like I said, I'll leave this down below so you can have a read yourself. But they're saying in February there may be a new RX action compact camera that's announced, and there could be a new 300mm telephoto. Now that makes sense due to the fact of the Olympics is coming soon, so I wouldn't be surprised with that at all. And the Sigma 70 to 200 2.8 FE sometime between February and March. In April, they're predicting, and I'm also predicting that before then too, we're going to have an A7 IV sometime in this February-March area as well. They are sort of talking about that a little bit down here. I think they're saying here that I've heard something bigger around March. It could be that the A7 IV, but we'll try to I will try to remain as conservative and put the A7R4, say A7 IV, releasing timing at Photokina just to play it safe. And they're also saying that there is a fair chance 70% the A7S will be announced at NAB. And that makes sense to me due to the fact that it is a video-based camera and NAB is the perfect place to release that. So they're saying in April they have the Sony A7S IV and also some Sign FE lenses. We saw a Sign lens just announced the other day. I think it was an 85, was it? I can't remember, but it was just announced the other day. In May, there's the Sony A7 IV. I think it'll come before then. I think it'll be before the A7S. That's what I believe anyway. Consumer Tele FE and a new Tamron FE as well. June to December, new wide-angle GM. So that's where they're saying that we're going to get this wide-angle GM, and that really excites me. I hope it's something like a 12 or a 14mm, something along that lines. If not, in May, Sony, the A7 IV in October. I'm hoping they don't wait that long to release that, though, and a new RX 100 model. So they're the rumours at this stage that people are talking about coming out with. I don't know what time that was. So let's go to Q&A. Oops, 50 minutes. 51. And see what everyone's saying about all this, because it'll be interesting to see. Cheers. Altric said, glad to see you back, Aaron. Yep, Aaron and myself will be getting back to the videography show, behind the photo show, when I get back from the US. I'm in the US for 4 weeks, so we will get back to that once everything's back, and hopefully by then, Aaron, all the earthquakes and all that sort of stuff will have finished. We just haven't been able to do it because he's been losing power, so we haven't been able to do it for the last few weeks. Jason said the A7 IV will just have a spec bump and a body swap probably. I doubt it will bring amazing new features. I hope it does, Jason. Remember, they really did produce an amazing camera with the A7 III, so I'm hoping they do the same thing with the A7 IV. Daniel said that's awesome. Hopefully these will be cheaper than the 1.4 models, and 1.8 is great for full frame. 1.8 is great for full frame. Also means that they're not going to be so big either, which is an advantage as well. When will Sigma announce a 70-200? Well, according to that Sony Alpha rumours, they're saying between February and March. Tim said after the A7 IV officially comes out, how long do you think the A7 III will go? Oh, how low? Well, if they release an A7 IV, it will drop. I mean, you can get an A7 III for some pretty amazing, A7R3 for some pretty amazing prices, particularly after the A7 R4 came out. So there will be a drop in the A7 III. I think they'll still sell it, but there will be obviously a good discount, particularly when it first comes out, because a lot of people will start selling their A7 IIIs. How about calling these live debates on the channel for gas talks? And besides, I don't believe the rumours of the upcoming cameras because they are unrealistic. Daniel says, I'm going to buy the full frame Foveon and a set of these lenses. Interesting. Julian, hey, what did I miss? Lots. Photomaic says, imagine if people loved Sigma cameras as much as they love the lenses. I know, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it? I'd like to see global shutter. Global shutter will come. It's only a matter of time before we get global shutter in a camera. Probably Sony will be the first to do it too. I don't get why Sigma moved away from the Foveon sensors. It was the only reason to buy one. Yeah, I don't understand that either. That sensor was an incredible sensor. Dwayne said, hello, David and fans. I bought the Sigma 105 today. Close call between that and the 135. Great deal at 1,300. That's really good. Got the 12 to 24G. It's spectacular. Can't wait to see you guys in San Francisco. That'll be fantastic, Dwayne. We can't wait to meet up with you as well. You're going to love that lens. The 105 I adored. It was brilliant. Really did love that lens. In some ways, it's a great lens too, because the 135 often is too long, whereas the 105 you can use in much tighter spaces. And there's a look about it. That 1.4 at 105 is just stunning. And that lens is incredibly sharp. Wish Sigma would do a 70-200 2.8 for Sony. They will be. Sometime this year. Dami says, hi David, hope you're fine. I am. Hope you're fine too. Jason says, I kind of agree with that list. Sadly, I'm about to use AP line compared to what would be the appropriate response to these comments. What's AP line? I don't know what that means. You'll have to let me know, Jason. Mark said, I agree about resolving lenses. Jason said, Photomiac, those Sigma FP could be cool to use in a 360 time-lapse rig, but I really doubt they are practical to hold for daily shooting. Exactly, David. People swear by Sigma glass, and while it's nice, it doesn't perform as well as G-Master plain and simple. Yeah, because it's not just about the lens. Like I said, it's about the other features. And the thing that I found was the Sigma 135 and the 105 was very good at focusing. It was very, very good, but it didn't beat the 135 Sony lens. The 135 Sony lens with those linear focuses, the linear focus motors, there's nothing like it. I mean, it's incredible. So if you're talking about the image, the 135 Sigma and the 135 Sony, I thought they were that close it wouldn't matter if you're dealing with just image quality. But if you're talking about shooting, anywhere or overall, like shooting in low light, shooting where you need the best autofocus possible, shooting where you can have the focus button, shooting where you can have the declicked aperture ring, well, they're all features that are there that are really nice that the Sony lens has. So it's far more than just what quality the lens will give you. Jay said, I rented the Sigma FP and wanted to fall in love with it. It's a video camera. I wish the autofocus was better for stills. The size was perfect for run and gun stuff too. Mark said, how are you, Mark, too? We should not look into it so deeply as character is king, in my opinion. Exactly. And this is why I tell people, don't worry so much about it. If you like the rendering of that lens, who gives a hoot what anyone else says? You love that lens. Altrix says, I'm switching to Sony lens because they work better with the body and that extra button in the lens is king. Yep. Completely agree. Thanks so much for the donation, Dwayne. Gerald said, Sony Alpha Blog says other criteria matters for choosing lenses, and on the 24 and 42 megapixel cameras, there is lesser difference in these lenses. As an A7R4 owner, I want full resolving lenses. John said, any guess on R5 price? Who knows? Probably, I don't know. I've got no idea. It's going to be expensive though. Yeah, maybe 4 or 5. Jason's saying, hell, maybe more. Maybe if they bring out all those specs in it, that's for sure. They are talking about bringing out a couple of cameras this year, though, so there may be a really high-end spec one, and then there might be one that's lower quality, that's still better than what the EOS-R is with the dual card slots and things like that. So there may be 2 versions of this camera. Canon Cripple Hammer, how about the Sigma Cripple Hammer? I love it. But are you in the Tammy cult? No. Tamron don't pay me anything either. I just like the lenses. They work for me, MJ. So if it was no good, I'd tell you it was no good. Helios 85 on my Sony a6 300 is good. Fun to read these reviews, but for many years of shooting, I've never had a client or editor ask me what lens I've used. Exactly. And you won't. They won't give 2 hoots. Jason said, where were we? Sigma doesn't have the cripple hammer. They just don't have the adequate engineering department. That's for that focus, obviously. Julian says, I've got the 28mm f2 great sharp lens. Gerald said, I have 3 lenses are outstanding here, 4 lenses that rate excellent, and 3 lenses that rate very good. I have the A7R4. The 85GM is not as sharp as the 135GM and the 24. Yeah, it's not, but it has better bokeh. See, this is the interesting thing that we've got to understand here, that what Gerald's saying is true there, that it may not have that resolving power of what the 85 is, that has not as good a rating as those lenses. But if you love the bokeh, you love that round bokeh and the rendering that lens gives you, well, that may be better for your usage than what these ultra sharp lenses are. And this is why I'm saying you've got to read these charts and stuff like that and really just have a look at them out of interest. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because if you love the look that lens gives you, who cares what anyone else is saying? And like I said, it doesn't matter if you've got the 85 GM. even though that won't resolve at that megapixel, you're still going to get beautiful results on that on an A7R4. If you're not pixel peeping, you're not going to notice the difference, and that's why I'm saying to you that there's other things to worry about than just the resolving power of those lenses. Hero said the full screen bokeh when the Sig 105 misses focus is magical. Yeah, I know it is. I did that out of focus too, actually. I love that. Jason said Sigma doesn't miss it. It just takes the photo of using Tony Northrup preset. I love it. Mark said, I tried out the 85 1.4 a while ago and did not like it as I felt it was too soft. But that is my observation. Saved the money and got the 85 1.8 instead. Yep, I can completely understand that, Mark. The 85 1.8 is a sharper lens than the Sony, than the 85 1.4. It just depends on whether you love the bokeh and the rendering of the 85 1.4, which is nicer. And that's the thing that, that you've got to understand. There's different rendering. It's like I said, I love the Canon 85 1.2. That's soft as well, but I love that rendering. In portraits, it's beautiful. It's funny to see people defend their gear like they're children or something. I know it is, really. I never give up my 85 GM. Love it. Laugh out loud, I'm still shooting on the Canon 2470 2.8 on my Sony A9. George said, if all this marketing hype is to believe, 2020 will be a landmark year for camera and lenses. Yeah, it certainly would be. Gerald says, I have the Sigma Art 2470 2.8 in E-mount and it focuses just as well as my best GM lenses and the IQ is excellent. I will have it with me at WPPI. That's why I think, though, too, Gerald, that there will be new GM lenses released. And I've mentioned this before, that Sony eventually will bring out version 2 of the GM 2470 and also the 70-200. And you'll probably find that when they bring those lenses out, it'll have the linear focus motors that the 135 has. There'll always be version 2 and version 3 of these lenses. Remember, they were the first ones that they released for Sony, and they had to get those out reasonably quickly because Sony took off and they didn't have that trinity of lenses. So they did have to get those lenses out fairly quickly, and they were probably designed on the A-series cameras. But I think you'll find the version 2 of those lenses are going to be incredible because they'll have the linear focus motors in them. So stay tuned. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Where were we? Gerald said, I read that. Photomech says, Jason, when I shot with the 85 GM against the 135, I did notice the softness at 1.4, but it was still sharp enough for my taste. Exactly. Any 50 1.2 for Sony? No, nothing in the yet has been released that has autofocus anyway. Aaron said, I love the Tamron 28-75. So do I, Aaron. I love that lens. Jason says, my only issue with the 85 GM is its CA is crazy. Don't ever shoot a fine houndstooth black and white pattern. It's a nightmare. Okay. I don't even mind its AF or the slight noise. Yeah, it's not the fastest focusing, that's for sure, though. That's another lens that could use updating to a version 2, and that will happen as well. They'll probably bring out a 1.2. I'm hoping Sony would do that, GM, with the linear focus motors. That would be amazing if they brought that out. Aldrich says, what is 2 hoots? It means you don't care. More than 1 hoot. It is Langston. Don't you say that over there. Aussie jargon for don't care. Exactly, it is. MJ says, David, I know you aren't a Tammy cult member. There are a few out there, though. There's cult members for every type of camera manufacturer or whatever that's out there, and it just always makes me laugh. I love Sony, but at the end of the day, it's just a tool to get the job done. And that's the thing you've got to understand, that they are just tools to get the job done. And I really don't understand the hate against other manufacturers. And I've tried to stay sort of as open-minded as I can to other brands all the time, because I think it's like I said, they're all tools. And if Canon bring out something amazing, I would be rapt for Canon to do that. Same as Nikon and everyone else. I want everyone to survive. I just don't understand the hate, really. But it's interesting how people do get like that. Photomix says, I would take the rendering and overall colours and bokeh from the old Canon EF-85 1.2 over a super sharp state-of-the-art lens with no character. Yep. And remember, often for portraits, you don't want a really ridiculously sharp look, particularly on a female. It's okay on a male, but if you're doing a female and you're getting a ridiculously sharp look, and they haven't got really nice skin, then you've got to start doing skin softening and other things because you'll show every wrinkle and they're not going to be happy with it. Gerald says, I still love the rendering of my 85 GM, but it does need to be updated with the latest linear motors. Yep, I agree, Gerald. I will keep the 85 GM along with the 135 GM and the 24 GM. I will defend my DNO lighting panel to the death. What does that mean, Langston? I love the Canon RF85 1.2 defocus smoothing version. Yeah, that is a really nice looking lens. The only issue is it's a slow lens. Because of that defocusing, you end up being, I think it ends up being around about an f4, I think, or something like that. So you've just got to be aware of those. It's like the 10, what's the Sony one that they have that it has the same thing? Is it the 105? I can't remember. Or is it the 100? I can't remember, but that has the same problem. It's a slow focusing lens. It does give you that really round bokeh. In some ways, I'm not a real fan of it because I tend to think that it looks a little bit unrealistic sometimes. It's the STF, the lens I'm talking about. I think that's the version of it. I don't like that look, but that's me. I prefer a more natural looking bokeh, and I don't even mind the cat's eye bokeh. See, everyone's different what they like. I find the STF lenses, and the same with that Canon. I think the normal Canon RF85 1.2 is a better lens for how I'd work, Andre. But like everyone likes different things. So, yeah, Gerald should be a moderator. I didn't. Isn't it showing him as one? Let me just check. Oh, no, he's not. He's meant to be. Well, he is now. I thought he was. Sharp had an 8K 6 months ago. Yep. But it didn't have a lot of other features like autofocus and things like that, though. So that's something you've got to understand. So I'm not saying Canon can't do it. It may be possible, but we just don't know. But we're just talking about whether we think it would be available. Photomix says, thanks to the softness of the Canon EF-85 1.2, I don't have to do much skin editing. Yep, exactly. That rendering of the 85 1.2 is beautiful. I agree with you, Ike. It's stunning. Hector said the 24 1.2, the best 24 in the market. I love that. Excuse me, I'm having beer burps. I love that lens too, Hector. I just added you as a moderator, Gerald. I didn't realise you weren't on here. What else have we got? I actually enjoy playing with other brands at the camera store. So do I. Michael says, why is the 50 1.8 cost 3 times the 35 1.8? No idea. I've got no idea why the price is different to that in that much. Tilly said, I would own all the Sony GM lenses, but for the price of 3 GM, I can own 6 Sigma or Tamron lenses. Yep, and have very close results. Right now, I'd rather have more options than the best of the glass, and that's true. See, if you're dealing with money, well, I agree with you that there's nothing wrong with getting the Tamron lenses. You can get the 28 to 75 and the 17 to 28 and the 28 to 75 for the price you'll pay for the GM 2470. So that's, it's a big saving. It really is. Oh, did I, David? What was your question? Put it down again and I'll answer it, David. I must have missed it. I wish the 100 was a regular 1.4. There was rumours of 105, I think it was, 1.4 that was going to come out, but we haven't seen that yet. So it's interesting. Altric said the 50 is an old lens and the focusing is horrible. Jess said, I really like my two Samyang lenses, the 35 1.4 and the 85 1.4, because they just give you a good look to the pictures. And that's what I mean. It's all about what you like as well. Thanks for adding me as a moderator. Yeah, I thought you were, Gerald, so I didn't even realise you weren't. Lord's just saying, what's up, guys? Mark said, hey, did that you a while ago? Oh, he's talking to Aaron. David, will you ever get the Canon 85 1.2? I don't know, Aaron, I might. I'm just sort of hoping that Sony brings something out in that range. But the problem is that the Canon 85 1.2 really hold their value. Anything that has really good value is a really good lens, always holds their value. And that's the reason why I haven't. But I do keep talking about it, and it's always in my mind. I'd like to probably get a really good second-hand one if I could get one. But, I'm not in any hurry, but it's always there that I think I would love to get one. Chris said, A7 III going to be better than the A9. Who knows? I doubt it, though, but who knows? But it might have other features that the A9 hasn't got. Like they might add 4K 60 into that camera, for instance. We don't know. Mark said, I still have the 85 1.2 USM, will never sell it. Yeah, I don't blame you, Mark, at all. Gerald said, Photomiak, I had the luxury of the best of both Nikon and Canon gear for 4 decades at my newspaper and my personal gear. MJ says, can I buy a blue wrench? What does that mean? I love it. Casper said, thanks for making me a mod also. You got taken out, Casper, because you were naughty. Altric says, I don't think so. He's talking to someone else. No one loves me anymore. I still love you, Casper. Langston said Sony does. Christopher said Sony better sensor though. MJ says, just show off your wrenches, jealous. I'm not sure what that meant. Photomix says, we know Gerald. We know 40 years worth. What else? Casper said, laugh out loud. Altric says, it might be better in some ways, but don't have the speed. I was talking to someone else. I'm just seeing if there's any other questions before we finish for the day. Now, if you haven't, just while we're here, if you haven't checked my last video I put up a video yesterday that had a review of the K&F NDs, and I was surprised how good the filters were for their price. Really surprised me, actually. They sent them to me. I'm always honest with you guys. But I thought I'd test it without the filter and with the filter. So if you want to check out that video, I show the ND filter. It's a variable one, but it's interesting because it also has a polarizer on it, and I haven't seen one like that before. But check it out because the results with it off and also on were really good. There was no crosshatch on that filter, which surprised me because all the other NDs I've got, apart from the ones that are stepped, like go from the 2 to 5 and the 5 and the 6 to 10 or 6 to 9, they don't step, but the other ones I've got do get that crosshatch. The K&F filter didn't do that, and I also showed a system where it used the square filters as well. So have a look at that video because I was really quite surprised at how well that system worked for the price. Really cheap compared to other brands that are out there. So have a look at it anyway. I posted that yesterday. So if you're interested in looking at that video, please give it a like. What else? That's just about it, I think. Hector said, David, the new Sony YouTube king. Thanks, Hector. I love it. I have a few K&F NDs and CPLs. Yeah, I love it. And they're such good price gear. I'm not sponsored by them, but they did send me that. Like I said, I'm always honest with you guys. They did send me that those filters, but I was surprised how good they were for the price. I thought when I put them on, there'd be a massive cast and that, it'd be cross-hatching, and it didn't. Casper said, my wife says I'm naughty all the time. I love it. Diane said, in practical terms, real life, how much better is the A9 II in low light than the A7R 4? Look, any camera that has, when I say any, the A7 III, the A9 and the A9 II is better in low light if you're dealing with very low light scenarios. It's about a stop. So that gives you an idea roughly about low light. But having said that, the A7R4 is fine. And it's if you expose correctly, the noise, the issues that you keep hearing people talk about are not true. They're usually caused by people that underexpose. If you expose correctly, it's fine. And look, all you have to do is if it does show any noise, just use your normal noise reduction software in Lightroom or Photoshop and it'll be gone anyway. If you downsample it to the same size that you get for the A7 III or the A9, the noise will be gone anyway. So it's all relative. But it's, yeah, sort of around about a three-quarter of a stop to a stop. I know you were kidding, David. I didn't take you serious. But they are definitely better in noise, Diane. The A9 II is definitely better. Mark said, whilst I was for a long time and loving it, just showing what the lens to people who... Yeah, Mark was saying, Aaron asked if he shooted Sony, because he said he had that Canon 85 1.2 lens. Will the A7 III ever update to the focus box? I don't think so now. No, I don't think Sony are going to give us that, unfortunately. Speaking of, those Moment ND filters look really nice too. Well, how do they compare in price? Ike, are they expensive, the Moment NDs? I did see them advertised the other day on Facebook, and they looked okay too. Freewell also produce... the ones I'm most happy with for the cost at the moment are the Freewell filters. The ones that you have, the 2 to 5 stop and the 5 to 7. I'll just see if I can grab them. These are the ones that I love the most. That they're Freewell. They're about half the price of the Peter McKinnon ones, which I have purchased too, believe it or not. But these are really nice. So they're designed that you use the stoppage that you need. So if it's really bright sunshine, you can go from the 6 to 9 stops. If you're dealing with it not too bright, you can use the 2 to 5 stops. But that's really good. And I'll show you this other one that they sent me. So this is the KNF one. So I'll give you a look, but check the review out if you want to see how it performs. But what I like about this is the controls on it are unique. That this is it here, and they have these sort of little knobs that stick out there, and you move that to control it. This is the 67. I wanted the 67 because I use them on the 24 GM and also the Tamron lenses, but really good filter. Not really, there's a fraction of green cast, but fraction, it's no worse than anything else I've used before. But there's no hatch, there's no crosshead hatch on this at all, and it has the polarizer built in. Really nice. So check out the review if you want to have a look at it. But like I said, my favourite really are the Freewell ones. They were sent to me too, by the way. Freewell, and then I really actually like this as well after using that yesterday. Langston said the variable NDs look nice, but I never use any of the square ones. I don't use square ones much either because it's a pain to have to carry them around, but they are handy in some regards, particularly if you want to get the graduated NDs, if you're shooting landscape and stuff. Videomaster said... not that we need 8K, but 4K is 4 years old already, so 8K is no big deal. They have been slow in the innovation, that people have become used to the old standards, but we should have been on 8K a year ago. Casper said it was Langston that cried to David. I love it. You'd have to put out Ike, have you put out videos? Yeah, Ike's always putting out videos. Hector said, what's the best 50mm for Sony, David? I have the Sony 50... Well, yeah, the 51.4 is a decent lens, but I like the 55, but this is what I love. I love the 55 1.8. That's my favourite 50 around the 50mm lens, but that's me. I just adore that lens. So I can only talk about what I think is true, and that's what Aaron also said here, that the 55 1.8 is amazing. Ike said he did put out a video yesterday. Yep, he did. There was a sneak peek this morning, I think I got from Ike. Any advice about shooting in the snow with the 100 to 400? Worried about the snow getting into the lens? Not really, Henry. Someone else may be able to chip in because we don't really have snow here, so not really sure. Someone that may have that lens might be able to chip in and answer that one. Video Master says Sharp's 8K camera was a working prototype. They let a few reviewers play with it, so their camera was not imminent. But I have doubts Sony or Canon can drop one anytime soon. Sony is waiting for the final blow and Nikon will be dead. That's what Casper said. David, the 2 to 5 stop is like 165 USA dollars. You can get the pair for $320. I have the freewell filters as well. Yep, I love the freewell ones. Ike, they're amazing. Sony needs to hurry the heck up. I love it. Altric said, question, I'm looking to get ND filter. Don't know what the variable I should get. I was looking at the one to put on the sensor, but no, I wouldn't get the one that goes on the sensor, Altric, at all. I wouldn't. You're just better off to have a normal ND. The problem is if you have something that's in between the sensor, if you have focusing issues, it can cause problems because you can take a variable ND off if you need it. I'd just buy a normal variable ND. I mean, like I said, that's a good cheap one if you wanted to get that one from K&F Concept. They're a good one that you can get. The really good ones are these ones that are split, like I said, between 2 to 5 and then 5 to 10. And the freewell ones are really good. I've reviewed them, so you'll be able to go back and have a look. I've also got the Peter McKinnon ones, but they're too expensive. I found the freewell ones match the performance of the Peter McKinnon ones. They were just as good in performance. Perhaps the Peter McKinnon ones were a fraction easier to turn, but that was about all. I think if you're performance-wise, you can't beat the freewell ones. But I haven't looked at the ones that Ike was talking about just a minute ago. The Moment ones, I haven't used those. G'day, Panda. Good to see you here. I finally caught your show, you devil of a photographer. I love it. Hope you're well, Panda. You know what I actually want is a switch pod. Yeah, I see that advertised a lot around. No one's ever offered me that, unfortunately. Photomix says, I like my JB, but the switch pod looks nice. Sony will release something everyone will want, Casper's saying as well soon too. That's about it, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, I will be live next week. I might even pop on live over the weekend or early next week too. But I will have this same show next Friday before I leave for the US on Monday. So we will have this show next week as well. So thanks so much for following today. Please, if you can, before we finish, I'd love it if you could give us a thumbs up. That does make a difference to the channel, seeing I'm unsponsored. So if you could, I'd love that. We've got 3 thumbs down. Thank you for that as well. For all the haters out there, that still gives you towards your analytics. So thank you very much. Apart from that, everyone, Panda, it's over. You came right at the end. Apart from that, I will see you all in the next video. Catch you guys.